Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me well? Probably pretty close. Okay, great. So today we're going to talk about the Quebec Immigrant Investor Program and why it's the clear pathway to Canadian permanent residency for a high net worth investor. So we're going to ask an important question. What is the distinct and seamless path to Quebec, Canada, for a high net worth investor? So what does that mean? I want to talk about distinct and seamless. There are many routes to Canadian permanent residency, but we believe that for a high net worth investor, they don't want ifs, ands, maybe, buts, or confusing processes to become Canadian. They're looking for something direct, they're looking for something simple, and they're willing to make an investment in order to receive that experience. So today we want to look at that. That's going to be the theme. What's the most distinct and seamless path to Canada for a high net worth investor? First, I'd like to cover who we are. So Alternative Capital Group is a merchant bank which is regulated by the Canadian security authorities in Canada. And basically, we provide the following services to high net worth investors in Canada and across the world. First, private investors. So not only do we structure, but we issue and distribute bespoke financial instruments, which we exclusively craft at ACG, mostly in the alternative investment category. Afterwards, we have the corporate. So we have our corporate finance and M&A division, which specializes in special situations, which most of them are. And so we develop innovative and customized solutions to best fit the business needs of our client. Multi-family office. So we have an unparalleled family office service to successful individuals, successful business owners, and private individuals as well. Basically, we do portfolio management, but we have customized solutions for our clients. And offshore, we specialize in the Quebec Immigrant Investor Program, as we believe it's the most seamless and distinct path to Canadian permanent residency. Why the QIIP? So, we believe there are three main reasons that helps the QIIP. There's a lot of jargon, so I'm sorry, I'm going to start using that from now on. Why is the QIIP the simplest? Well, we believe there's three reasons. It's the simplest because, or it stands out, because it's the only active investment immigration program in Canada. Currently, there is a pilot project in place, but it's not very active. And so if you want to go to Canada, investment immigration for a high net worth investor is the best, as opposed to a traditional immigration route. Second, we believe why the QIP? Because it's a passive investment. That means that a third party is taking care of managing the funds, and there's no active investment needed. That means that it's problem-free. And the third is that the QIP is the most flexible. And again, I think we can say that for the atypical client who's a successful investor. They want something that can offer the most flexibility. Before we start detailing and talking more about that, we'd first like to cover the history of the program. So, 1986, taking you back a few years, Government of Canada and the Government of Quebec introduce a new immigrant investor program, and the purpose of this program is very simple. We're looking to attract successful business people, high-level, C-level management employees, to come to Canada and establish themselves. The investment at that time is $150,000 Canadian or $250,000 Canadian. And actually, it's an indirect investment. That means that a third party manages it, and the capital is at risk. So that means that there is a possible return, but there's a possible loss of your money as well. In 1996, due to the high demand, the government increases the investment. So that's the first increase. So to $250,000 Canadian and $350,000 Canadian. And the program also experiences something new. Quebec offers another option in 96, which is a $500,000 investment, but it's guaranteed by the state. So that means that the state of Quebec credit rating of AA2, according to Moody's, guarantees the investment to the investor for a period of 3 years and then restitutes the capital. So because it's guaranteed, no risk, no reward. So it's 0%. Second increase. So obviously, the program's very popular. And the guaranteed option is so popular that the federal government wants to follow Quebec and begins offering also this option. And so basically they harmonize the programs. That means that it comes to a $400,000 term deposit investment with the state, either of Canada or Quebec. And you need $800,000 Canadian in order to qualify for the program, in order to be admissible. 2010, third increase. So obviously the program is very, very popular. Government's trying to bring down the level of applications. They can't follow the speed or the amount of them. And so the program increases to an $800,000 Canadian investment and a $1.6 million threshold in order to be admissible for the program. And in 2012, a moratorium. What that means is that the Government of Canada closed its program because of an important backlog. It was trying to process almost 60,000 applications on the federal level, and the Government of Canada could simply not meet that amount of applications. So after 2 years, the Government of Quebec does something interesting. The Government of Quebec imposes a quota in order to help process applications in a timely period. And so Quebec says, listen, we're willing to take 1,900 families each year through the program, and we're going to keep the same criteria of $800,000 Canadian, locked away for 5 years, fully guaranteed by the state. In 2015, the Canadian government tries to get creative and introduces a venture capital program, which is a pilot project. It's a $2 million investment, locked away for 15 years, where the capital is at risk. And you also need to get audited by a Big Five accounting firm. And you need a threshold of $10 million Canadian in order to be admissible. 7 people apply to this program. So today, Quebec upholds its criteria, as discussed earlier, and is the only active investment immigration program offered right now where the capital is guaranteed to the investor. What does the future hold? It's difficult for us to say. So we don't know where the program's going to go, and we don't have a crystal ball, obviously, but all indications show that in 2018, the program will remain the same in the summer of 2018. Currently, it's open. We still have spots left at ACG where we can place investor families. We hope to fulfill those in 2017 and begin our waiting list in the winter 2018. Now, I'm going to pass this over to my colleague Samuel, and we're going to have a look at the 3 reasons why we believe the QIP distincts itself.
As Alex mentioned earlier, there's 3 main advantages for this program. The first one actually is the investment immigration versus traditional immigration. So as a first point, we distinct unconditional versus conditional immigration, which mean in context of conditional immigration, the principal applicant have to prove to the government that it will create a business in Canada, manage the business in Canada by creating new jobs, but mainly actively manage a business in Canada on a day-to-day basis. For that, actually, the government will provide a conditional permanent residency for the investor and his family in Canada. Meaning conditional mean that if the criteria are not fulfilled or the business is not successful, the government can withdraw the permanent residency from the family. So in the majority of those programs, physical work is required in Canada. For high net worth investors looking for unconditional solution of immigration, which offer more flexibility in this program, the QIP offers a solution. So the investment is made through a financial intermediary in Quebec, which is called Investissement Québec, which is a government-owned company that acts as a catalyst for the Quebec economy. The partnership that Investissement Québec has formed functioned very well, improved its worth in 2016 by attracting more than 65 projects in the provinces, which attract more than 1.5 billion in investment in the provinces. So the result of this program is unconditional Canadian immigration, which provide the investor with permanent residency without the need to work in Canada. The point B is the certificate of selection versus provincial nominee program. So in many provinces and territory in Canada, the province are allowed to nominate investors that they feel that they can bring value in the province. But they can only nominate those investors. They cannot select them, which means that the authority remains on the federal government to proceed the application. In the case of Quebec, Quebec is special. There's a special accord between Canada and Quebec. That means that Quebec can select its own immigrants. So meaning that the burden to select the immigrant is on Quebec, which can attract an investor based on criteria that they feel are best for the provinces. So they have a greater control, and when you get selected, well, that means that you will be accepted to the federal stage and get a PR afterwards. The QIP criteria versus a comprehensive ranking system. Comprehensive ranking system is applied to all program in Canada. It's a ranking system based on the age, level of education, experience of the investors that help them qualify for different programs. In the case of the QIP, the investment agreement with a financial intermediary plus the 2 years of management experience allowed them to get about 35 points out of the 40 needed. So which means, as an example, that if a principal applicant holds a high school diploma, he's qualified for the program, which made it very easy to qualify. So active versus passive investment. Alex talked earlier about the active management versus the passive management, passive investment in terms of the QIP. When we talk about active investment, obviously that means the capital is at risk for the investor in a new venture business in a foreign country, which can put a lot of risk in that business since many investors are not necessarily familiar with the Canadian economy. So by going through a passive investment like the QIP, that means that the term deposit is guaranteed by the government, managed by a third party, and will offer a passive investment problem-free solution for the investor, which do not have to worry about the capital. That make it a cookie-cutter product that can apply to many high-net-worth investors and can create a repeat business easily for many businessmen, actually. And most entrepreneur programs require management experience related to the business that they will create in Canada. In the term of the QIP, any management experience can be authorized, actually, and it's not related to the investment. So all those variables make it difficult in many active business to have a repeat deal. In the case of the QIP, it's pretty easy to repeat for different clients. And also Canadian institutions are involved in that transaction and offer a very interesting financing option for the term deposit, which make it even more attractive for the clients. And by working with Canadian banks, you work with one of the most sound banking systems in the world that have been provided #1 for 9 years in a row by the World Economic Forum. Thirdly, we talk about the flexibility that offer the QIP. So it's a direct path to the permanent residency, meaning that it's flexible for high net worth investors. They don't have to be in Canada during the process, so they can wait until the Canada government provide them with a PR so they can stay in their own country, work their day-to-day life until they receive the permanent residency card. Also, they only make the investment after the government approval, which make a lot of sense. But actually, in many investment programs, they ask you to make large deposit or complete investment prior to the acceptation of the government. In this case, it's not required. So the government body will give you an acceptance letter before you do the investment. And also the Quebec certificate selection give you a lot of flexibility when it comes to moving forward with the federal stage. So when you have been accepted in the program, you can hold on until 6 years to the Quebec certificate of selection before you move forward with the federal stage. This way you can secure your allocation in Canada without being subject to residency obligation or future change in the investor program. So you can hold a call option in the pocket until you're ready to move forward. So those 3 points make us think that the QIP is the most distinct and seamless path to become a permanent residency for a high net worth client. Now we'll cover those eligibility criteria. Actually, there's 2 of them. Have 2 years of management experience in the last 5 years prior to your application, and also have a net worth of 1.6 million, obviously obtained legally between the principal applicant and his spouse. Those can include real estate, bank account, private equity, and business asset. Then after, have intent to settle in Quebec and sign an agreement to invest $800,000 in the provinces. Right now, the Quebec government actually work on an allocation intake-based system, which means that if you work with the right partner, your spot is guaranteed in the program and you will get called for an interview or your file will be processed, which is very different if we compare it to a lottery, for example, process. So if you're submitting an application as an investor, you must sign an agreement with one of the financial intermediary, broker, or trust company that are listed on the government list. And currently the industry is breakdown as the pie chart behind me. Roughly 70% of the clientele come from the country where is the most demand, which is China, year over year. So we are, for every file sitting in the allocation system, there's about 6 waiting to get a place in China. So the demand is very high in China. This is one of the reasons ACG Offshore actually specialize in the other 30% non-Chinese investors. So right now we work in Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, Senegal, Cameroon, Ivory Coast, Turkey, Iran, India, where we did many files, and all those countries actually can get allocation in the remaining 30% of the file, which is roughly 400 allocation a year. So obviously the main purpose of our trip here in Cannes is to integrate CIS country to our offering. So we travel regularly to meet those clients, so we want to add those clients on their traveling schedule. I will leave the last word to Alex to explain you how we work with financial intermediary who are managing these allocations.
Great. So we established that financial intermediaries have 1,900 spots to hand out. And how does it work? How do the spots given out to agents and mandatories? That's the case for ACG. So, well, I can start off by saying the proof is in the pudding. What that means is that financial intermediaries should really be considered as wholesalers, depending on who, or most of them in most cases. And basically they distribute allocations to agents who have had a track record. Basically people who've had success in the industry and have had files accepted. Because you see, the financial intermediaries are in the business of financing or raising capital. And that means that if our clients are not accepted, they can't invest and they can't do the cost of financing. And so what that means is that brokers in the quota system, all those quotas have as face value or certain value for intermediary. And so if they lose that cost of opportunity of a client that gets refused, they don't make money. And so they don't hand out allocations to people that have bad track records. And ACG has had a lot of success with many clients from different jurisdictions. And we believe this is more of an accounting-based process than a legal-based process. And maybe I can get into that later. But we believe that by having a few select clients, being able to present their file accordingly, especially the accounting side of it, the inflows and outflows of revenue, how much they've invested, how much they've spent, we believe we can get any client through the program. Obviously when everything is obtained legally. Let's look at the 7 simple steps, which is the process of how you obtain Canadian permanent residency. Obviously this is very simplified, but here we go. First step is to contact ACG and obviously reach out and open a file and complete a KYC, a Know Your Client, where we're going to look at the personal balance sheet of the investor and have a better understanding of his academic background. Second step, obviously you want to complete all documentation. So we talked about the investment agreements, power of attorney, mandatory, all necessary documents to submit your applications, which are essential with Quebec. Obviously provide all documents. So the application will require documents which show that you're a manager of at least 2 full-time employees, and documents that support that you not only meet the threshold, but that you legally obtained all your assets. And then we're going to submit your application to the MIDI, which is the Ministère de l'Immigration du Québec. Then there's a selection interview. So you'll be meeting in Montreal with an officer. All offices abroad are closed, so now all interviews are in Montreal. And so you're going to meet with an immigration officer and get a decision on your application. And once you get that decision, that's where you're making the investment. That's where the capital is deployed with a financial intermediary or Investissement Québec. And afterwards, you move to the federal stage. So the only thing left to do is a medical and security check. So you're selected. You're going to get the permanent residency subject to your medical and admissibility and your security admissibility. Once that's completed, you obtain the Canadian permanent residency. Right. So what does it mean to be a permanent resident in Canada? Permanent resident means that you and I would have the same rights and same benefits in Canada. So free healthcare, almost free education. For example, in Quebec, 90% of the cost of education is paid by the state. I mean, obviously, you're going to be living in one of the safest places in the world. The only difference between permanent residency and citizenship is the right to vote and the passport. That's the only differences. Right now, Forbes says that Canada is the number 2 place of doing business in the world. So Canada has extremely low corporate tax rates and probably one of the most advantageous to start a business. And as Samuel mentioned earlier, it's one of the soundest banking systems in the world. So Canada's banks rank in the top 10 consistently, with some of our banks having up to $900 billion of assets under management. So why is ACG the best preferred mandatory for you in your application? Well, let's have a look. We focus on quality, not quantity. What does that mean? That means that we don't do any other immigration programs in Canada. We work exclusively with investment immigration programs and citizenship by investment programs. So we have, we like to have a better quality of clients because of the other services that we offer. And we don't necessarily want a volume. That means that your application gets lots of love, lots of time, lots of energy put into it to get an acceptation. You're going to work with full-service professionals. So we're a seamless solution. So we have already Quebec lawyers in our team. We have people that are accountants. We have bankers. We have people with backgrounds in business. And so you're able to get access to a lot of people in a boutique cabinet, which remains very flexible and can service or spend a lot of time with the clients. Obviously, Samuel and I are registered immigration consultants in Canada. So I would have to go and say that whenever you get advice in terms of immigration, it's very important to work with someone who's accredited to do so. So that's part of the Canadian Immigration Consultants, the ICCRC. It's important to work with those people. As I mentioned, we have a proven track record with financial intermediaries. So what that means is that we have preferred relationships and we're able to place your application with those intermediaries given the quality of the work that we do. Seamless process. So the fact that there's little layers, there's not 20 layers to get to the permanent residency. You don't have to work with a local office. We travel everywhere and meet our clients in person. We sit down in their offices, we speak with their accountants, we speak with their lawyers. It's basically a seamless solution. You don't have to work with 3-4 layers before talking to someone. All my clients have my mobile number. They can call me whenever they want, and I can address their questions immediately. Great. I think we're ready to open the floor for questions, if any. I'd like to thank you for your time this morning, or I guess now we're in the afternoon. Thank you.